I will never forget the first time I gazed upon the Erd tree, stepping out into the lands between. It was beautiful in a way that invokes the divine, radiant like a second sun, its sheer scale making it truly inescapable no matter where you stood above ground. Like so many of us, I was entranced. I had to know what this glorious thing was, where it came from, and what its relationship was with the fabled Elden ring that we all seek. The answers I found, dear Tarnished, only ever seemed to lead to more questions. Who was Queen Marika? What is the Greater Will? Who is Radagon? What makes someone Elden Lord? What is the Golden Order? How did the Great Runes come to be? What is the purpose of the Elden Ring?
Great Elden Ring, root of the Golden Order, anchor of all lands, giver of grace, wellspring of all joy.
These threads of forgotten history spread out from the source like the roots of the Erd tree itself. A woven tapestry of mysteries that beckoned me to all corners of the lands between. Yet to my surprise, they kept leading me back to a single point. Welcome, Tarnished. My name is Ivor the Bard, and this is the story of the One Great, the shattered father of all creation, who wishes only to be whole. In an ancient tomb, deep beneath the sewers of Leyndell, home to atrocities I will never be able to forget, a girl named Hyetta gave me a revelation that would sear itself into my memory, seconds before it reduced her to ash.
I have touched them. The words of the three fingers. As your maiden, allow me to divine them. All that there is came from the One Great. Then came fractures, and births, and souls. But the Greater Will made a mistake. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned, melted all away with the yellow chaos flame, until all is one again.
When she spoke, it was as if something deep within me resonated with the words. Like the oldest part of me already knew the story. All that is came from the One Great. A single being, existing beyond time in a single place. He had no name. There was never a need for one. He had no language. Communication requires a recipient. All he had to do with eternity was simply be alone. Tarnished, we will never know the reason for what happened next. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe all the energy in the universe being contained in this singular form was inherently unstable. Or maybe, as I like to think, he simply started to wonder if anything else could be out there. The thoughts of the universe can be a powerful thing. The One Great's mind expanded out into the nothingness around him, creating the cosmos in a rolling primeval current. If you train your intellect, you can feel it. The primordial flow of space itself. Just don't dive too deep, lest you find yourself swept away. The One Great's essence, the singular golden will, shatters. The fragments spread from his body, forming the first golden stars amongst the current and seeding the new universe with his energy.
Golden amber contains the remnants of ancient life and houses its vitality.
If you have faith, you can connect to his original spark within yourself. And one day, when we die, our souls will follow along the primeval current, becoming new silver stars in the night sky.
While glintstone contains residual life, and thus the vitality of the stars.
Dear sister, you're finally here. No time to waste. Let's see the stars.
The One Great's withered form collapses into the newly created earth, coming to rest deep underground. As it decomposes, it writhes with the potential for all life. A great tree grows from this primordial crucible, breaking the surface and allowing life to take root. The lands between are well named, Tarnished. They sit on top of the body of the One Great, the origin point of all things. Oh, good Tarnished, the first children of the Crucible were unlike anything we could imagine. Our earliest ancestors were true giants, inheritors of massive portions of the Crucible's energy. Much of early life was chaotic. Part beast, part tree, tails and horns and wings shared around, as if the divide between each species was blurred. A rare few were born with branch-like horns, sprouting from their very souls. Living seeds for new great trees, allowing life to flourish and spread. You heard that right. The great tree that first grew from the Crucible. What we know as the primordial form of the Erd tree was not unique. The Golden Order has done its best to bury the truth. But what remains of the great trees can still be found in many places outside of their influence or their notice. Living seeds were worshipped as vessels of the divine. One of the oldest recorded religions, the ancestral followers celebrated them as inheritors of the natural cycle. This process continues to this day. By a decree of the Golden Order, we call these living seeds omens and cut off their horns. Millennia pass, and life fully engulfs a young Earth. Newer generations are born progressively smaller, as the Crucible's precious energy is shared and divided amongst them. The One Great is horrified. Thoughts move at a glacial pace through his scattered consciousness. What are these things? These pieces of me that act on their own? How dare they diminish me like this? To lose your life is a troubling thought for anyone, dear Tarnished. But to lose all that there is? None of us could imagine how that feels. His children are not ungrateful for everything he has given them. They worship him as the source of all things, building massive and intricate temples in his honor. Their depictions of him reflect their understanding and devotion, an ancient and towering figure, bestowing tablets of wisdom with roots of the great tree spreading from his body. We don't know what they called him. That knowledge has been lost to time, but all throughout the underground ruins, from Mogwin Palace to the Lake of Rot, the image of the One Great dominated this ancient society. Despite all that gratitude, the One Great can only drift voiceless through an uncaring world, unknowable to all within it, lamenting the loss of himself. He will exist for as long as the universe does, good Tarnished, as they are one and the same. Yet all he can cling to in this fractured state is a single feeling. He had made a horrible mistake. The strangest thing about worship is how it evolves over time. We living beings are restless and always looking for new ways to express ourselves. Each aspect of the One Great, each natural step in the cycle of creation, was in time worshipped separately. Fire that burns and reshapes the world. The rot that turns old life to new. The death that frees our souls to follow his into the great beyond. The core concepts of his natural world became subjects of their own religious gatherings. But worshipping a concept alone isn't particularly satisfying. Instead, hierarchies formed. Priests became leaders. Leaders became the focal point of devotion for their flock. The belief of the multitudes, each a tiny spark of the soul of the universe, can be a powerful thing.
The distant light is far and frail, so faint it can't be seen by the naked eye. But with everyone's eyes together, it appears.
Reality conformed, and their leaders became true avatars for these primal forces. Beings that we now call the Outer Gods. A new era had begun. An era divided as differences in faith naturally spark war, and capricious gods claim territory and fight for influence. From all the turmoil, the ancient dragons, led by Storm King Placidusax, began to emerge as the dominant force in the lands between. A merciless legion of living rock, striking from the air with fire, lightning, and death. None could stand against them, and they slaughtered with complete abandon in an effort to expand their empire. Yet as they did so, something began to change. All that death, all that life energy in one place, beckoned to a shattered mind that had long since given up. The One Great called out, and Placidusax heard him. Imagine hearing the voice of the universe, Tarnished. A voice that spoke to you through your very soul, resonating with your entire being and bearing down on you with the weight of all creation. Placidusax never stood a chance. From the first moment of contact, the will of the One Great had him enthralled. The Storm King wasted no time doing the bidding of his new lord. Starting at the very center of the Lands Between, a city of very deliberate design began construction upward and outward in concentric rings of avenues and towers. The larger his kingdom grew, the more he indulged in the carnage of battle and conquest, the stronger the connection to his lord became, imbuing his dragons with even more deadly abilities. Eventually, inevitably, the One Great's grand design was realized. The Sun Realm, a city of colossal proportion, ringed walls and bridges expanding out from the center like the spokes of a wheel. Its architecture was both elegant and precise, an unmatched wonder of the ancient world. Yet the inner city was a graveyard. The underground foundation was a multi-tiered catacomb for countless beastmen and even dragons, with even more preserved beastmen corpses sealed into the walls and floors of the city itself. Many showed signs of being buried alive, backs arched in pain or panic. It was as I was gazing at this grisly architecture that it all started to make sense. The One Great knows more about life than anyone, good tarnished, for it is all a part of him. By infusing so much life into these structures, with intention and design, he can direct vast quantities of that energy along predefined paths, treating rows of corpses as canals of least resistance. The true genius of the Sun Realm was how it harnessed the energy of life. Or perhaps more accurately, the energy of death. At the center was the seat of the sun, a colossal tower ringed with an even greater concentration of death that acted as both throne for Placidusax and a focal point for the city's energy flow. The great Dragon King would float on the current in the center of the circle, his connection to his master's will strengthened by orders of magnitude, the intoxicating presence filling his being. For each new sacrifice added to the pile, the voice would grow clearer. For each new life captured by the flow, Placidusax would grow stronger. But it was far from over. The One Great demanded more. The outer gods were conquered and forced to submit one by one. Their power kept sealed in 6 divine towers spaced evenly around the Sun Realm's inner wall, built specifically to contain them and connect them to the city's greater energy flow. These towers were constructed of composite glintstone, their tops ringed with rare golden glimstone amber, pure crystalline fragments of the One Great Soul, powerful enough to bring these primal forces to heal. It is here that we see the Sun Realm in its prime, a truly overwhelming construct that encompassed all the surrounding kingdoms and extended to every corner of the Lands Between. Newly built roads connected the kingdoms by trade. Huge buttressed walls extended along the island's perimeter. Giant magical golems, given life by the Sun Realm's energy, patrolled the streets. And colosseums throughout the land provided a constant flow of fresh sacrifices. Huge clusters of corpse-packed gravestones in what we now call Dragon Barrow act as necrotic reservoirs, stores for even more life energy. The Grand Temple near the center of the city depicts the networked stream of life energy, coursing up through the sealed divine towers and then collecting at the seat of the sun. Those of us who've seen depictions of the Elden Ring may find this image eerily familiar. Placidusax was at his apex, the unrivaled king and god of the land. His whole body had been turned to brilliant gold through this relentless exposure to the One Great's essence, from his scales all the way to his bones, even changing his fire. He had been imbued with both the strength of his victims and the unimaginable power of the sealed outer gods. He was the One Great's chosen vessel, wielding the full spectrum of his abilities. Placidusax had become the Elden Lord. Shields recovered from ancient undead warriors all around the lands between depict this moment in history. Placidusax, glowing like the sun at the top of his tower as he converses with the will of the universe, 4 heads outstretched and calling beyond the farthest star. Soon, he heard. Soon, I will be with you. The Dragon Lord was overjoyed. He would never know that he was already doomed. It began with a premonition. A vision came to Placidusax one day of a girl surrounded by wolves. A vision that felt so important the Dragon Lord made a statue of her in his temple. Soon afterwards, the One Great's voice fell silent, his presence receding until Placidusax could barely sense it. The Dragon Lord used his favorite position in the seat of the sun to reach his mind out further, wondering why his god had fled. And all the while, a great celestial body hurled towards the lands between, a vast and concentrated collection of the golden stars that made up the One Great's original soul. The seat of the sun was never a font of power for the dragons, nor simply a means of communication. It was a beacon, reaching out into the great beyond and drawing the fragments of his soul back to their point of origin. What happened next is described in the most ancient and forbidden incantation of the Erd Tree. If we recite the story with enough faith and resonance, we can see the scene recreated before us. The Elden Stars. The Elden Stars hit the seat of the sun with such force it was ripped clear of the lands between entirely, and hurled high into the air above the eastern sea. A rain of lesser stars followed, dragged in its wake through the primeval current, ravaging the land even further. In an instant, the landscape was violently reshaped, shattered into segments and twisted into sheer cliffs and sloping plateaus. Our wretched little Dragon Lord, horrifically wounded, acted quickly to save what he could. Mustering the considerable power he had left, he enveloped the fragments of the seat of the sun around him in a storm beyond time, reassembling and preserving in time the central city as it once was. We live now in the aftermath of this cataclysmic event. A sea now exists in the center of the lands between, marking the point of impact. The 6 divine towers, despite the land radically shifting beneath them, are still standing, almost as if they were deliberately spared. Chunks of the central city were scattered across Liurnia, Limgrave, and even as far as the Weeping Peninsula. Fragments of these ruins still retain some of their energy, glowing from the inside when polished. The storm beyond time still rages above the Eastern Ocean, chunks of the Sun Realm forming a forbidden world, that we now call Baram Azula. Floating alone atop his tower in the eye of the storm, Placidusax called endlessly to the god that he knew could make this right. His beloved master would return and all would be well once again. All he had to do was keep his faith, hold strong, and await his return. He remains there to this day, his body withering, scales drained of colour by the time spell. His storm slowly receding. His prayers unanswered. Placidusax was a tyrant, good tarnished, a blood-drenched terror even before his master's influence set in. Even so, I cannot help but pity him. The one great was overjoyed. He has no capacity for love or loyalty for any of us. And why would he? From his perspective, we aren't even real. It's a disturbing premise, but I'm not even sure that he's wrong. As the golden amber fragments of his soul worked their way through the earth and back to the crucible below, he found his grasp on reality growing stronger, and his voice along with it. He wanted more. Far across the sea, a Newman girl named Marika heard a golden voice that seemed to resonate from within her very soul. A presence that called itself the Greater Will.